In this little video, I'm going to look at one of the most iconic sightseeing flights in New Zealand. It is a flight normally taken from Queenstown to Milford Sound and back. You can see here from the map that the flight path crosses some incredible mountain ranges, beautiful lake, and the incredible Milford Sound itself. It's normally undertaken by single or twin engine light aircraft seating up to perhaps 6 or 8 people at most. It is a spectacular journey, and although I've not actually made the flight myself, I have known of a close friend who said that the wingtips looked as though they were about to touch the mountains during the flight, and the overall experience was absolutely amazing. So we're going to follow the route, the yellow track from Queenstown out to Milford Sound, and then back via a different route back into Queenstown. The map that is displayed here I have obtained from one of the air tour companies based in Queenstown, and this is the map that they provide to their customers, showing the route that they are likely to take. I think the pilots have a little bit of flexibility dependent on the weather as to the exact route that they follow, but I shall try and recreate this within the flight simulator by entering this into the flight planner as a VFR flight and then transfer that into the GPS system so that I can have a moving map to follow during the flight. So I have recreated the required route in the FSX flight planner, and the red line that you can now see will take us from Queenstown over the mountains into Milford Sound, descending turn to land back at the Milford Sound runway. So I shall now save this flight and then import it into the GPS system within the FSX program. For the flight I shall use the Beach Baron, which is a default aircraft with... Well, I have now imported the map into the standard GPS. We can see the beginning of our route on the GPS display here. If I select flight plan, I can see that it's 66 miles total journey. I'm going to reduce the size of the GPS so that it will fit into the upper corner of my screen, and that then should not interfere too much with my beautiful views en route. I just use this as a moving map reference. I can see the line that I need to follow. Okay, the aircraft has been checked and fueled, and we're ready for our flight to the beautiful Milford Sound. Time to start the engines. Okay, we let the engines warm up nicely and we shall taxi gently to the runway for our takeoff. So I'm now heading in the direction of Queenstown and Lake Wakatipu, but I am going to be taking off in the opposite direction. So I'm going to turn the aircraft around in the turning circle at the end of the runway, and we shall make our departure. Okay, Lake Wakatipu behind me and Queenstown, and shortly after takeoff make a gentle left turn to pick up the first waypoint, second left turn to our crossing of the mountains. I have input a required altitude of 10,000 feet into the autopilot, though the autopilot is not active at this present time. Okay, take off. Lift off, gear up, and climb out. Weather is set for a summer's morning here. We shall have a nice summer's takeoff and perhaps make a winter return. That's the beauty of a flight simulator. Here, making my gentle turn towards the first waypoint, you can see displayed on the GPS. Nice view of Lake Wakatipu behind the aircraft now. Back inside the aircraft, I have now made the autopilot active for my altitude, but I am flying it by visual flight rules, and so I am directing the aircraft to follow the route as I want. It's not being done by the autopilot. So I am now making the left turn to pick up the next red sector of my route, but the autopilot will take us to an altitude of 10,000 feet. It's climbing at 700 feet per minute. We might well experience a little turbulence here as we fly over all these mountains and mountain ridges. Passing through 6,400 feet at the moment. Glimpse of Lake Wakatipu now, behind the aircraft down the mountains to the left here. Approaching 8,000 feet now. This gives you some idea of just how large Lake Wakatipu is. Under the left wing now is the settlement of Glenorchy, which is at the mouth of this river estuary that runs into Lake Wakatipu. Snow-capped mountains in the distance. Snow on these mountains year-round at the high altitudes. Another nice shot of Lake Wakatipu. So in a very short distance now I shall make a left-hand turn, cross the mountains and overfly Milford Sound. Turn left now. You can see that I'm using the red route line more as a guide than actually following it. I'm looking for interesting areas to fly over, as this is a flight sim flight. Now about to pick up the next leg. On the GPS it will change from white to red. Just a gentle right turn now to follow the red sector. You can see the ocean in front of the aircraft now, so I'm not far from Milford Sound, which leads out to the open sea. Now directly on my track line to Milford. Milford Sound is now just below the nose of the aircraft. So I am now going to take over, make a manual descent along the sound to around about 2,500 feet, and then make a slow descent back to Milford Sound Airport, which is now directly underneath the aircraft. So back in the cockpit, turn off the autopilot. We'll get a warning bleep, and I will now fly the aircraft visually into and along the sound, make a descending turn as I enter the ocean area, and then come back along the sound for my landing. I'm now at around 2,500 feet, and I'm going to begin my descending left turn back into Milford Sound. I am now going to fly up the sound to Milford Sound Airport, maintaining somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 feet initially, and making a slow descent as I make my way down the sound. airport is now in sight. I need to really concentrate, slowing the aircraft for a gentle touch. Flaps, runway in sight. $1,500 feet. Gear. Flaps. Maintain around 80 knots now. 100 knots at the moment. Touchdown around 80 knots. Welcome to Milford Sound. A bit of crosswind taking the aircraft around there. As we taxi to the parking area, we track flaps. This is a beautiful area. The valley on the far side of the aircraft now is the valley through which we shall return to Queenstown. So apply brakes, shut down engines, time for coffee. For our return trip to Queenstown, we will take the more southerly route, and that will take us over the mountains and down about 2/3 of the lake. So we should have quite a picturesque view on the way back. First thing is to enter that route into the flight planner. So here is that route entered into the FSX flight planner. I've had to approximate it because there are no specific points on the map that I used to copy the route. So again, the route will be for guidance only, and we will be at around 10,000 feet. The suggested altitude here is 13,005, so we'll keep an eye on the mountains around us. And here we have once again the GPS, and the map has been input into the GPS. You can see the beginnings of it here. I can alter the scale of that to show more or less, Here's Queenstown, here's Milford Sound, and here's our route back. Once again, I'll reduce this to a smaller size for convenience. Now, before I take off, I'm going to climb out of the Milford Sound, climbing all of the time, turn, come back, and then pick up the route. The initial climb out and turn around is not shown on this map, but I need altitude to make sure I'm clear of all of the mountains. I've set the weather as winter time. Clear skies, just a few light fluffy clouds, but we should get far more snow on the mountains for our return journey. It's a late afternoon flight now, so the sun is beginning to set. Hopefully we will have some nice views as the sun sets as we pass over the mountains. So engine start and make our way for takeoff, and let's just enjoy the flight. Now going to make a right hand turn followed by a left hand turn and fly back up the sound and pick up my route. – 8,000 feet at this time. Now making the left hand turn, 8,200 feet at the moment. Turn back and fly up the sound to connect with the route. Glimpses of the sound through the cloud, and we shall be skimming the clouds, I imagine, for most of our return trip. So I shall shortly make a right turn and fly up the valley that we saw as we landed. Turning right now. Make a left turn now. Pick up the next sector of our route. So now over Lake Wakatipu, going to turn right and follow basically the centre line of the lake for a little while. Now we are safely out of the mountains and over the lake. I'm going to commence my descent to 5,000 feet. Queenstown has an altitude of about 1,100 feet. So a nice gentle descent initially, and I shall shortly be considering my final approach. My left turn, throttle back for the descent. Okay, descending now. Over Queenstown now. Crossing over Queenstown. I can now see the Queenstown airport. I shall make a parallel pass to the runway and then turn and come back from the opposite direction for landing. At 1,000 feet above the runway now. A little bit of crosswind. will turn to line up with the runway. Welcome back to Queenstown. Lovely traction and find a parking space. Hope you enjoyed that little trip around the beautiful region of New Zealand.